Now, we are on part 3 of our series called Simple. And this is a series that is talking about why is simplicity so important? Why did God, Jesus, as he came, why was his ministry so simple? And what did it unlock in his life that allowed him to completely change the world? And so that's what we're discussing, is this idea of simplicity. Why is it important, and how do we do it in our own lives? And so in the first week, we talked about clarity. How when you allow your life to be simple, when you fight against complexity, when you fight against distractions and all of those things, and allow yourself to find some simplicity in your life the way that Jesus did, you have clarity. You can see where you need to go next. And I was honest with you, God is very rarely going to show you the whole path, but oftentimes when you have that fogginess where you can't even see what your next step should be, simplicity will actually unlock some clarity in your life. And I gave you the illustration of when I was driving in fog and I turned my high beams on, and it didn't work very well because illuminating fog is never the answer. It's about eliminating the fog. And so that's why simplicity is so important, is it allows you to have some clarity in your life to know, where should I be going next? And then last week, we talked about movement. Okay, when you know what your next step should be, how come it is so hard to get there? How come it is so hard to actually get yourself to move from where you are to where you know you're supposed to go? Especially when it comes to spiritual growth. We call it being stagnant, where you can't seem to get any movement. And so what we talked about last week is a lot of us think it's about the barriers in between where we are and where we're going. And that's why we cannot get any movement or growth, or we can't mature in the areas that we know we're supposed to. But we looked in the Bible and said, really, the issue is that we're stuck where we are right now. The traps of the enemy don't usually destroy you. They just hold you right where you are right now. And many of us are stuck where we are, and we don't even realize that we're stuck. And so if we want to get movement, once we know where we need to go, and we want to get some movement there, then it's an issue of freeing yourself from the trap. And for most of us, the trap is busyness and complexity, and just running around in circles and trying to react to everything that's happening, and it keeps us stuck where we are right now. And so simplicity unlocks movement and growth and maturity in our lives because it frees us from that trap. And so we're moving on. We're on part 3 today. Would you pray with me over this message? Father God, I pray that your truth comes out this morning, God. I pray that I do not add anything to it. I do not take anything away from it, God, that this is an accurate representation of who you are this morning. In your name we pray. Amen. All right, we're starting in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, verse 26. And this is what it says. Therefore, I do not run like someone running aimlessly. I do not fight like a boxer beating the air. Now, I brought this verse up to you. We had a sermon titled Run to Win, and we looked at this. And this verse is a very important verse if you're really trying to run this race and live this life the way that God has called you to. It's a very important verse. And today, the attribute that we're talking about, that simplicity really helps us to unlock in our life, is alignment. That's what we're talking about today, is alignment. And what I mean by alignment is I mean that all of your movements, right? We talked about clarity, and then we talked about movement. All of your movements are in line with each other. They are all going in the same direction with each other. That's what alignment means, is how closely aligned are your movements to each other. But it also means that you don't have parts of your life that are messing up other parts of your life. So alignment is really important on that as well. I shared this with our Bible study a few weeks ago, but Leslie has a bike that we need to fix because the brake is not aligned well with the tire. So what happens is, as you try to ride it, the brake is rubbing the tire, and you've got to work twice as hard to go half of the speed. Alignment is very important because it allows one area of your life from messing up and slowing down another area of your life. And so alignment is incredibly important. Because in the first week we talked about clarity. You got to know where you should go. You got to see what the next step is. You got to clear out the fog. Then you've got to actually be able to get there. You've got to be able to make some movement. You've got to free yourself from what's holding you where you are so that you can start to move. But now we're talking about how do you actually link those movements up together and get them aligned so that you start to change your life. You start to change the world the way that Jesus did. Do you know that Jesus changed the world in 3.5 years? Have you ever thought about that? I've been in ministry for way longer than that, and I'm just like, Jesus, how on earth? It seems to take 2 years to even get anything started, to get any ground at all. How did you, in 3.5 years, absolutely change the entire world? How did he do that? His secret was alignment. You guys know that? Jesus' secret was his alignment was impeccable. If you read through the Gospels, if you read through his ministry, his alignment was perfect. And I remember there's a toy I used to play with as a kid, and you guys probably will know exactly what I mean when I tell you it, but it's a toy that has these balls hanging from strings, and they're all lined up with each other. You guys know it? And you take the end one, and you lift it up, and you let it go, and when it hits those, none of the other ones move until it gets to the end, and it shoots that last one the exact distance that you lifted the first one. And it's meant to show you, the idea of every reaction has an equal and opposite reaction, and so it shows you how energy is transferred. But what's really interesting is if you take any one of those balls in that row, and you move it even the slightest bit, that last ball will not move. That energy will not be transferred if there is misalignment at all. And it doesn't even need to be far. It can be just a little bit. And we need to understand how important, especially in a Christian's life, alignment is. And if you go back to 1 Corinthians, what he's talking about, he's like, therefore I don't run around like crazy. I don't run 10 feet over there and then run 10 feet over here and then go up there and come back over there. I don't swing around like a boxer just beating the air. This isn't how I live my life. I'm going to live my life with alignment. If I'm going to have movement, it's going to be aligned and it's going to be going in the same direction. What's really interesting is that alignment is actually what determines the result of all of your movement. You guys know that? You can be moving all day long, but if those movements are not aligned with each other, you're not going to get any results from it. And that's why this is such an important topic. And we as the church do not really teach alignment very much anymore. And that's why I really want to make sure I explain this. Because alignment is directly related with impact. And we as the church don't really teach impact anymore at all. That's a word that's kind of been lost by the church, the idea of actually having an impact. But if you look at Matthew chapter 5, verse 16, this is what it says. It says, in the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. What he's saying is, live a life of impact. Live a life that when you come in contact with somebody, it impacts their life. There's some force behind what you're doing. Not in a mean way, not in a nasty way, but when people see you, when they see how you live, it impacts them in a very real way. But what's happened is we've fallen in love with the word reach. We've exchanged the word impact for the word reach. And so instead of saying, we got to impact the world, we got to impact our community, is we've started exchanging that for saying, let's just reach the world. Let's just reach our community. But reach and impact are not the same thing at all. When I was growing up, we played two-hand touch football. Anyone else play that growing up? Okay, some other people, okay, good. It's a pretty easy concept. It's the same as football, it's just we played in the middle of the street, which I don't think you can get away with anymore, but we did. We played in the middle of the road. Cars slowed down. It was fine. So tackle football was pretty out of the question at that point. And so we played two-hand touch, which means if you touch somebody with two hands, they were down. But if you only got them with one hand, then they weren't. And I was really good at this game because I've always had kind of like a long torso, long arms. Even as a kid, I was really good at reaching and getting both hands on people. And so I was really good at this sport in like 3rd, 4th grade. And in 6th grade, it came time for me to go out for tackle football. And I was really excited because I was really good at two-hand touch. And I was excited and I was ready and I go, I'm going to dominate this. And I remember one of the first practices, I got put on defense and someone threw the ball and I saw them catch it and they were running and I'm like, I'm going to get to them. And I did. I got right to them, put both hands on them, and then the next thing I knew I was on my back and they were in the end zone. Like legitimately, because I was never taught how to bring any impact with me. I never had to worry about any impact. And so all I was trying to do was reach, but it doesn't matter where you can reach if you don't have any impact behind what you're doing. And as a church, we struggle with that. Not us here, but in America, it's let's just reach. But the truth is, if you don't have any impact, it does not matter how far you can reach, because you're going to get run right over, as I did, and I learned my lesson, and I learned after that I was a little bit better at two-hand touch than I was at tackle football. And that's okay. We can't all be good at everything. But if you want to be a person of impact, alignment is absolutely necessary. There's no way around it. If you look at any sport, if you want to bring impact, you have to be aligned. Your body has to have alignment or you will bring no power to what you're doing whatsoever. So if you're playing baseball, if all you're trying to do is bunt, you're just reaching. That's fine. Just reach. You don't have to bring any impact. But we have not been called to do that. We've been called to swing and swing hard. And if we want to hit the ball hard, if we want to have impact, then our swing has to have alignment. It's true of any sport. Football, golf, baseball, name it. That's why people pay thousands of dollars to get lessons to help their body be in better alignment with their golf swing and all of those things. Movement doesn't mean anything if it doesn't lead to impact. And that's why we need alignment. So the question today is, why is alignment such an issue for us? If we're saying, man, the church in America doesn't have the impact it once had, which means it probably doesn't have the alignment it once had. We do a lot of moving, but we're not seeing the impact. So obviously there's something going on with our alignment as Christians in general. There's something going on where alignment is an issue for us. And here's the lie I want to address today. And this is really important. The lie is that the issue is that we don't know how to align things in our lives. So a lot of us believe we're just really bad at aligning things in our lives. And I understand why we think that way. Most of us, when we look at our lives, nothing seems to be in line with it. We're running around and we're trying to take care of this, and then we're running and trying to take care of that, and none of it seems to really fit together. None of it really seems to be going in one true, clear direction. And so we think, and it's very understandable to think, we must just be really bad at aligning. We just need to go to a workshop. We need to have someone teach us the art of alignment. And once we learn how to align things, then we will be fine. The issue is that this is a skill that we don't have. But this is simply a lie. If you look at Proverbs chapter 12, verse 15, this is what it says. It says, "The way of fools seems right to them, but the wise listen to advice." What it's saying is, even foolish people do things in such a way that they feel is right. Even foolish people align their actions to something. We all align. Do you know that you were born to align things? It's a skill we all have naturally. You do not have to be taught how to align things in your life. Even foolish people, which I probably could be considered that, at least at points in my life, even the people that you go, man, that is not a wise person, they know how to align things. They do things that they feel are right. They do things in the way that they think this is the correct and accurate way to do it. And so if the lie is that the issue is that we don't know how to align things in our life, here's the truth. Is that the issue is that we align things in our life to our own will. That's the issue, is that we're really good at aligning things in our life, but we align them to the wrong thing. We align them to our own wills. And the reason that this is a problem is that our wills are constantly changing. You guys know that? Constantly changing. You're going to wake up tomorrow and probably feel different about something than you did today. Even though nothing changed, we are constantly people of changing wills. If you want to see the condition of our own wills and thoughts, you can look at Ephesians chapter 4, verse 14, where Paul is just begging the church. He says, "Then we'll no longer be infants, tossed back and forth by the waves and blown here and there by every wind of teaching." That's what we do when left to our own devices. We are constantly being tossed back and forth. Our wills are constantly changing on us. And we wake up each day and it's hard to know, what is my will going to be today, because it's constantly changing. From the time that I was 6 to 12, I wanted to be a basketball player, I wanted to be a rollerblader, I wanted to be a football player, I wanted to be a professional musician, probably 18 other things, and I was positive at those times, this is what is going to make me happy. This is the key to everything. If I can make this happen, everything is going to be perfect, until I got up the next day and it was different. Anyone else with me on this? Always changing. What's going to make us happy is always changing. And you know what happens is then we have to constantly realign, and then realign again, and then realign again, and then realign again. And the issue is not that we're bad at aligning, it's that we're bad at deciding what we need to be aligned to. You want to know Jesus' secret? It's in John chapter 6, verse 38. This is what he said, "For I have come down from heaven not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me." I know this sounds trivial, but this is huge. And if you get this, it will absolutely radically change your entire life. Is he was aligned to the will of God. Everything that Jesus did was aligned to the will of God. He refused to align any of his movements to his own will. We see this in the garden when he says, "God, can you please take this cup from me?" But he said, "I will not align even one single movement to my own will. I will align my movements to the will of God." And you might ask, why is this so important? And the answer is in Numbers chapter 23, verse 19, where it says, "God is not human that he should lie, not a human being that he should change his mind." That's huge. When you align your movements to the will of God, you align your movements to something that does not change. And that is a very big deal. Because when it comes to alignment, whether what you're aligning yourself to changes or not means everything. The effectiveness of your alignment is determined by the stability of what you're aligned with. That's what Jesus learned. And so Jesus, his alignment was perfect because he aligned with something perfect. Our will is not perfect. Our will is constantly changing. It is not stable. We wake up and it's different every day. And so we find ourselves constantly having to realign. And so when you look at your life and you say, "Man, none of this goes together," it's because we live in a constant state of realignment. Because every time we watch a video that gets us all excited about this new thing that's going to make us happy, and I'm the worst of that. You can ask Leslie. I'll watch a video and the next day I'm like, this is going to be me now. This is going to be what represents me. This is going to make me happy. And so I throw myself into it and I try to realign everything in my life, only to find a week later I'm onto something new. And I've got to go back through and realign everything all over again. And so we do exactly what Paul says I don't do, which is run over here and then run back over here and then run over there. You can have all the movement in the world, but if it's not aligned, you're not going anywhere. You don't have any impact. And that's the vision for our church, and that's why we're naming it Foundation Church. is because we don't want to be a church that's running back and forth. We want to be a church that has stability and alignment and knows exactly what we're aligned with, something that doesn't change, something that stays there, that we can know once we have aligned our movements to God's will, we are good. We will not need to have to keep realigning because God's will does not change. And so if the lie is, man, the issue is that I just don't know how to align things very well, I just need to go to a workshop and learn this skill. And the truth is, no, you know how to align. You need to learn how to align to God's will instead of your own, which is a very hard thing. But the change then is align everything in your life to the will of God. In Hebrews chapter 6, verse 19, it says, we have this hope as an anchor for the soul, firm and secure. That's our hope, is you can actually anchor yourself to the will of God and be secure. And your movements will stay aligned because God's will not change. Yeah. And the thing is, simplicity is not about doing less. Simplicity is about doing the right things and not doing the other stuff. And you have to understand that, because if you go into simplifying, just saying, I want to do less things, you're probably going to cut out some of the wrong things. But if you go in saying, I want to know what is in line with God's will, and I'm going to cut out the things that are not aligned with God's will, you are not only going to do the right things, but you're also going to simplify at the same time. And that's why alignment is so important. And so this week in your prayer time, I'd really encourage you guys to ask the question, what have I been aligning my life to? Because you've been aligning your life to something. There's no way around it. We were made naturally to align ourselves to something. And so what have you been aligning your life to? And is it something that is constantly changing? Because if it is, you probably need to do a realignment at that point. And I would really highly recommend aligning yourself to the will of God that doesn't change. Because then you will not have to keep going back and redoing this again and again.
That's good.
And so this morning, even if you need a realignment, come up and let us pray for you. God is really good at this stuff. I said that last week, but you don't have to be responsible. This isn't me saying you got to be smart enough and you have to just figure this out. It's truly you got to give this over to God and let Him align you to Himself. And I believe that He will.